Google, if I remember right. The very advanced irrigation systems. That's how Israel managed to turn a desert into a very, very productive space. And many other innovations come to our mind. It's amazing, like the USD, I remember there are so many. We could be talking here from all day long about the amazing things is the Israeli companies and people have accomplished. And the question is, how can it be? Like Brazil is a much older country, and we have many other countries that have universities being run from like decades, but we don't get the same kind of result. So, I mean, that's the motto of our discussion here. How can Israel be one of the most innovative countries in the world? Dr. Neta, your first thoughts.
Sure. So first of all, thank you for inviting me here. I think that's an excellent question. How basically, what are the elements that brought Israel to be the startup nation? I think that we have several elements that basically contribute to this status. One of them, of course, is the entrepreneurial mindset. By the way, we are studying the entrepreneurial mindset. What we are measuring that actually. Also, in our college, we developed certain questionnaire to measure what is the entrepreneurial intention of our students, and we are comparing between male and female engineers and in business schools. And it's very interesting because to learn what dictate actually the entrepreneurial intention of our student is basically will distill what are the elements that needs to be in the personality of an individual that will make him to want to become an entrepreneur. The second element, that this is something that actually I want to show with you today in the short presentation, is the government support. And the government support, this is a very well organized with a very clear strategy that actually brought to Israel to the same place. So Diego, would you like me to share that with you?
Sure, please.
Okay.
Please.
So I need you to enable me to share the screen.
Okay, so I'll ask some help from our support.
It's okay, pessoal. It's okay, people.
Okay.
Okay, so you can share it.
Yes. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So first of all, the Israel innovation is indeed in each part of our lives, whether this is in our cell phones, in medical. And I want to show you a short video that will demonstrate to you how Israel is basically, the Israel innovation is part of our lives. One sec. Wait. Oops. Sorry.
No problem.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, it's on.
So this is one of the top modelists. I don't know if you're familiar with.
Yes.
Are you familiar with? Yes.
Yes, actually, I remember this advertisement because of Vara Raffaelli. I remember it went viral at the time.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So it was effective indeed. Can you see my screen again? Yes, okay. So basically, Israel is indeed a global leader in research and innovation. We are ranked among the top ones, even above the US. I mean, in the parameters of quality of research and development, and also in the level of innovation. I think that we can add even the level of the disruption of the innovation. The VC investments as percentage of the GDP, if we're ranking that, so Israel is in the top level. And indeed, Israel attracting a lot of investors to here. I can share with you that I have my own consulting firm for healthcare technologies, and investors are basically seeking for Israel-based technologies, and not because they want to develop the products here, but they want basically to buy the IP or alternatively just to invest. The major, by the way, this was taken from government, the IIA report. Israel basically has a major activity of multinationals like IBM, Intel, Merck, Samsung, HP, really all the big ones, Amazon, Huawei, and Facebook we have here. And by the way, it's always growing, the number of the multinationals. They are competing after our engineers and always increasing their salaries. And, that of course has its own positive and negative effect in the society, but this is the situation. And indeed, the high tech is the major impact on the Israel economy. 9% of the employees in Israel, okay, they are basically high tech employees. They create 13% of business sector GDP, and they are responsible for 50% of industrial exports. Meaning that basically the high-tech sector, this is the economic engine of the Israeli economy. And this is something which is amazing because, many countries, they have, their own mines. They have either water, gold. So we do not have that, any of those. We have only the intellectual property. And this is why we have deep concern, and we are doing deep thinking, and also we are studying that, and we are doing research about it, how we can improve the technology education, okay? And more than that, how can we improve the entrepreneurial intention of our engineering students? Because basically they will be the one that will fuel the future Israeli economy. Again, the local innovation has a global impact. 50% of global low-pressure irrigation systems, they are Israelis. Over 1 billion computer processors developed and manufactured in Israel, not far from my house in the south. By the way, that in the city that calls Kiryat Gat, that this is a low socioeconomic city. Intel established their manufacturing facility, and 1 billion computers in the world basically are using that. That's amazing. Millions of hearts are powered by Israeli cardiovascular stents. The cardiovascular stents industry in Israel is very strong. The first capsule for endoscopy was developed here in Israel, and actually is based on, this is a different story, but it is based on technology that is used for missiles, okay, in the defense industry, and basically was translated into the medical world, but they are using the same technology, but for medical use. And of course, a leading road safety technology is the Waze. I'm sure that you're familiar with DiscOnKey. This is also an Israeli development. And we are the world's top digital and 3D printing technology. Also here, 40 minutes from my house, there is a very well-known 3D printing technology companies. And indeed, there are amazing technologies that were developed here and has a global impact. Excuse me, if I will run after the next videos, I will send that to you and other examples for different technologies. I do want to focus with you on specific company that calls TytoCare, that indeed with all the situation with the COVID, we saw the impact of this company. I will send you afterwards the link to the video. But basically, and this is what I started to mention, it is true that the people that are coming from Israel, they have a very much entrepreneurial mindset. But it's not only that, it's not the whole story. The whole story, basically, I think that Israel is kind of different. And by the way, Khadija, that will be very interesting to compare that. But there are government incentives that fuel the Israeli innovation. And more than that, there is a government body that calls the Israeli Innovation Authority that's responsible for that, okay? And they are basically responsible to build the next innovation engines for the Israeli economy. And this is what they're doing, okay? And I must say that my husband is working for the Israeli Innovation Authority. He's responsible for the healthcare sector. We met in the university with the Weizmann, and then we continued together to Stanford. But basically, the IIA, the Israel Innovation Authority, is basically focusing on developing innovative ecosystem. And how they are doing that? They're working on 3 pillars. First, they are strengthening the connection between the academy and industry. In one of our research topics and published papers, Professor Khadija and myself, we demonstrated how difficult it is to build the gap between the academy and the industry. And even though we have a very nice institutes like technology transfer offices, they are not working as they should, because still there is a lot of knowledge that stays in the academy and basically is not translated into something practical in the industry. And this is one pillar that they are working on. There are certain programs that aim to build this bridge and to enable this connection, to tie the connection. And for instance, there are researchers that receive funding from the government to develop more translated science. And the second pillar is companies and ecosystem. And this is something that I'm always telling to people from outside of Israel, and they are amazed. In Israel, for instance, my students in the accelerator, when they are working on a project, and if they have, at the fourth year in engineering school, you need to submit a project, okay? And if they have in the end of the year a project that they want to further develop, they can apply to the IIA. And the IIA, their strategy, one of their strategy is basically to invest in high-risk projects in early stage. Like they are doing basically the opposite of VCs, because VCs, they want to reduce risk, so they want to take the risk. So basically, they are enabling that there will not be, in most cases, of course, there is a very well-educated process to evaluate and to see whether this technology has a chance or not, and what is the deepness of the science and what is the market, of course. But basically, they are enabling for early stage high risk projects to get funded. And I remember that also my father received 2 times funding from the government in very risky projects. And I know many people around me that received that amount of money, that this is a very nice amount of money. And I think this is basically the way that the Israeli government is able to sow the seeds of innovations. And this is something that it is amazing. More than that, there is and all the time, by the way, the IIA develop more advanced methods how to induce innovation. For instance, now they have innovation lab, whereby they're enabling to corporates and companies to develop high-risk projects, okay? High-risk products. So this is why also multinationals comes to Israel, because that they will get funding for that. And that's something that it is amazing, because in most countries, the governments wants to reduce the risk and they want to take the risk. The third pillar is global alliances. And this is something that the IIA invests a lot of time and efforts to build global alliances. And they are doing that in various forms. It can be even if a company wants to establish a manufacturing facility. Although Israel is not that strong in manufacturing, but more in a research and development center. So Israel is very strong in artificial intelligence. So many multinationals now in different industries are coming to Israel to establish an AI R&D centers. And that's really very fascinating, because that will open a lot of job opportunities for future engineers. But what is very interesting that, we all experienced, during the past year and a half, almost 2 years now, the crisis with the COVID. But prior to that, we knew, everyone that is within the healthcare industry like myself, we knew that we have a healthcare crisis in the world. This is not a secret. The healthcare spending is constantly rising. In the US, 85% of the healthcare cost is spent on chronic diseases, okay? That is basically 18% of the US GDP. And by the way, those investments are not effective at all because we are, the US population is constantly increasing, although the health span, but there is a constant decrease in the health span, increase in the lifespan, but decrease in the health span. And in the same time, the biopharma industry, okay, is the cost of drug approval increased from 1.1 billion in 2010. It rise to 2.1 billion in 2018, meaning that it's taking even longer to develop drugs, and we're investing more, and we're not increasing, by the way, the number of approved drugs than in the past. Okay, meaning that we're investing more money and we're getting the same result. Okay, so this is inefficient industry. So that, of course, was not a good picture even before the COVID, but it basically induced a certain need in the industry, and basically we are experiencing. It's not that I think it's not that adopted in the public service yet, but there is a shift for preventive care, and there is a investment in technologies that will decrease the R&D returns. But if we'll take this together, the healthcare crisis that was here before and is still here before the COVID, add to that the COVID crisis, and we got really an unbeatable situation whereby it's very clear that innovation in healthcare is needed, okay? And it is needed not only in the international level, but I think that every country invested and investing and understand that this is basically the new defense mechanism that every country should have, is to do basically healthcare innovation and to invest in healthcare innovation. And this is something that the Israeli government is very clear about, and the IIA, this is also taken from the IIA report. Basically, they're saying, okay, the 21st century will need to have a different healthcare system. And as I mentioned before, the high-tech sector, this is the strength of the Israeli economy. This is basically the economic fuel. And so basically what they said, okay, what we are going to do is basically to take our knowledge and experience and professional and highly skilled human capital, and we're going to combine it together with our knowledge in biotechnology. And this is what is called the Bioconvergence National Program. And the Bioconvergence National Program is indeed converging between different capabilities from the engineering world and different capabilities from the biotechnology world. By the way, the person that developed this program, this is my husband, Dr. Neta Kela. But this is basically the idea. And I want to show you a short video that demonstrates very clearly what is the Bioconvergence program, and basically why Israel chose this program as the next economic fuel of the Israeli economy. 1 second.
היי, אנחנו קאבר, ברוכים הבאים לתיק האישי שלכם. כאן אפשר לראות את הסטטוס העדכני של כל הביטוחים, החסכונות והכיסויים שלכם.
fields of medicine are changing, improving, renewing. The past year showed us that the growing need for innovative technologies used in developing more precise, personalized medicines and treatments is already becoming reality. Among the leaders of this revolution is Israel.
The Israeli high-tech environment is one of the leading environments or ecosystems that can enable this.
We have some of the best scientists in the world.
People think outside the box and look for creative solutions to problems. Yes, Israel is an international center of innovation with groundbreaking technologies in health, in cyber, in smart transportation, and alternative energy. Israeli innovation in the field of personalized medicine combines biology and engineering. It's called Bioconvergence. What exactly is bioconvergence?
Biomics is the only clinical stage phage company out there that targets chronic indication. We deploy phage, which are viruses that infect specific bacteria.
NanoRetina developed a small camera that is implanted inside a patient's eye. Our technology translates light and optical signals into electrical pulses that enables vision to the patient.
The technology that we have developed is under the title Bioconvergence.
We have chemistry, engineering, biology, immunology.
SciBio biofabricates tissues from human cells. We take 3D printing and we combine this together with the biology, which essentially brings us the capability to fabricate the tissue in the same anatomical structure as it is in the human body.
And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Because when you're able to collaborate with multidisciplinary capabilities like ICT, big data, machine learning, and artificial intelligence, then you can create integrative, creative, and innovative medical solutions.
The Israel Innovation Authority creates national and international networks and provide with funding to initiate projects.
Many of Israel's startup nation streams parallel Jefferson streams.
Because of Israel's exceptional innovation ecosystem, we've developed a series of creative partnerships across a spectrum of Israeli institutions.
So let me ask you a question. If Israel is at the forefront of bioconvergence, with the world's most advanced technologies and some of the world's leading medical research centers, and when $40 billion worth of worldwide profits from medicine stem from Israeli inventions, can you afford not to be here?
So this is the bioconvergence. This is indeed is going to be. Wait, where am I? Yes. Okay, so this is indeed is going to be the next innovation engine of Israel and in general. But just to give you a sense of how it's going to look like is basically when we are going one step further, what is needed in the world and what is basically will be the solution is basically bioelectronic medicine that will be able to have miniature implants that will be able to deliver and to be controlled constantly, biosensors, devices, and those are, for instance, a few examples of Israeli companies that grew from a small seed to a company due to the support of the Israeli government. So this is Israel. It's, for me, it's very important, to tell you that it's not only about the entrepreneurial mindset. I think that if each one of you had the possibility to give to his students financial support to start its own enterprise that could be, fuel and induce entrepreneurship intention. But more than that, I must say that the fact that in Israel people came from different parts of the world. For instance, my grandparents came from Yemen. My husband's grandparents came from the UK and Russia, okay? It basically enforced each one of us, to start from scratch. Not only us, but also our grandparents and parents. So we can talk about it, for hours. What basically induced natural selection in the nature. So I think that this in the same manner. The fact that we have to serve in the army is also basically, I think, enforce you to get older, faster. It's not like we all served in very dangerous army, not at all. Most of the girls are secretary in the army, and most of the boys also are not doing anything which is significant. But the fact that you need to behave, to wake up early in the morning instead of going to the college and going to a party on the evenings, so that's also I think also induce early development of the kids. But I think that the Israeli culture of innovation is very good, but I do not think that we have the same capabilities as other countries to take innovation and to develop it further. And if you will look deeply into the most successful innovations, so at some point the company basically combined or collaborate with multinationals or with international company or with company which is outside of Israel. For instance, Israel has a very successful collaborations with Germany. And why with Germany? Because Germany is very good in doing it in upscale, in building a very well-efficient manufacturing facilities. So I think, in the end of the day, the fact that we have here a very good innovation development mechanism is good, but it cannot be excellent if you will not know how to build the international alliances. So this is my short answer to your question, Diego.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Neta. I mean, many questions pop into my mind right now. And there are so many things that are very interesting you can talk about. Like I was wondering about this entrepreneurial culture you just mentioned and how maybe it sounds that it's part of Israel's history. I mean, the need to create solutions for very difficult situations. I mean, on Brazil, on the contrary, like we still have many natural resources, and we really rely on these natural resources to keep our economy going on. But at the same time, I mean, they don't involve highly added value activities like innovation in Israel and other places of the world. I mean, it's not the kind of economy we have here, or part of the economy is not very good at creating development, technology, innovation, and well-being for the population in general. I mean, it tends to concentrate wealth and that kind of problem. Israel, on the contrary, it sounds like it uses the market forces at the fullest for their benefit. I mean, how to use the market forces and how to balance them with the government activities and initiatives to spur and to create more innovation in the country. And that's amazing. I mean, it's amazing to see a country that has 50% of exports related to high-tech products and services. I mean, it's almost difficult to believe because that's a very, very high number. It's amazing. But I was wondering about the role of the government, the role it plays on incentivizing innovation. You mentioned that it funds more risky scientific endeavors, like probably, I believe maybe it's related to basic science. I mean, probably these activities are at that level where they're not commercially viable yet. So the government kind of bets on people. I mean, it believes that can create a company in the future or a new technology. And that's amazing because, I mean, usually that's something that is deeply needed in order to, in the future, have a viable product and so on. But a part of funding directly universities and scientific initiatives, research and development activities and so on. I wonder about Israel's institutions on a broader level, like both informal institutions, I mean, the kind of recognition entrepreneurs have in the Israeli society, and the formal incentives, like probably it's easier to get a patent approved in Israel than it's here. Brazil, it's known for its bureaucratic world, which can be very problematic to say the least. But how, I mean, could you elaborate a little bit further on these broader institutions or these broader incentives Israel offered to entrepreneurs and innovators in general? I don't know if maybe my question is to
I understand that. So first of all, as I mentioned, the international level from the government side, there is financial support in innovation. But more than that, we in Israel, it is very well accepted, the incubators, innovation incubators. Actually, it started here, and that's a very good and effective model for entrepreneurs in later stages. So basically what we have here is basically the whole suite for develop innovation, because when you are in the beginning, let's say you are one person, you just you have the ideation process and you are applying for the IIA. So you will most likely, if it is a good one, you will receive the funding, and then you are developing that, and then you can go to an incubator, and the incubators that, by the way, are also has government support. So basically they are already connected with multinationals. So that opens whole new opportunities for you. For instance, I'm in the investment team of one incubator in the south of Israel, and they are connected with multinationals, meaning that you are as an entrepreneur, if you will go to this incubator, you most likely that you will be able to raise funds, to do pilot studies. You're going basically to the fast track. Basically the fact that you have the whole system that works for this innovation, that's excellent. But more than that, I think that in the Israeli culture, we are much more accepting failures. And that's an issue with entrepreneurship, because basically, and this is also something that we're studying in the courses, and I have a full lecture to my students about failures, because this is something that it is inseparable from the fact that you are an entrepreneur. But this is something that we're accepting that, because I think that the society is much more open that you are going to experience, and there are chances that you will fail and chances that you will success. So this is something that it is also deep in the roots of the Israeli society.
Okay, interesting. I remember when I went to Israel, I was walking through the Tel Aviv and Jerusalem campuses, and I mean, the atmosphere was so vibrant, and all those youngsters, they were really into, not only they're into their studies, but they were talking about how they would build something that could really have an impact. And I mean, there's this big, actually the other day we had another live session, and it was about it was a Brazilian conference, academic conference that was going on at the time. Actually happened, maybe 2 months ago. And we were talking about this chasm, this wall that sometimes separates the academic world from the industry, from the market. And I think that one of the key points that explain the success of Israel is that Israel, the country as a whole, has managed to erase that wall. I mean, you see a very strong collaboration between universities and companies and so on. I mean, there's no prejudice from the academic world towards companies and so on, because in some countries it can be really difficult to get academic knowledge systemized and commercialized as a traditional company or a startup, you know. And I think that's part of Israel's success, that integration between universities and industries, different industries, like the health industry.
Actually, on that, I must say that I wish that I could say yes, but it's not. There is a huge gap between the industry and the academy. We are lucky that we have governments like the IIA that give financial support for those kind of projects with the industry, with the academy. But basically, I think that as long as universities and colleges will give the incentive of their professors by the number of papers that they are publishing, that will not induce the collaboration with the industry. So this is something that indeed we see that the professors that they do establish startups, there are not that many. I know that the Israeli government is investing a lot in offering very attractive programs, but it's challenging. It is challenging.
Okay, it's interesting to know that. But anyways, I still believe that you are like miles ahead of us here in Brazil and maybe in many other countries. But I completely agree with you that in the incentive structure that actually kind of organizes our profession as professors, it's really skewed towards publication, right? I mean, it's the same all over the world, I believe, or in most part of the world. Like, then we have these two worlds. I mean, the publishing world and the business world on the other side. But still, I mean, I don't know a lot about Israel. I've been there only once. I've read a little bit about it, but from my experience, I mean, you guys have been doing a really great job, even though there's more to do. There is always more to do.
There is more to do. I agree.
Yes. Well, I have many other questions, but I'd like to open to my colleagues here to make their questions, to pose their questions. You can write your question in the chat box. You can do it either in Portuguese or in English. You can translate it if you want. Khadija wrote, always fantastic, Neta. Thank you very much. Big pleasure to have you here with us. Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, Khadija, maybe you like to.
So, Neta, thank you again. Thank you. Very, very, very nice and very insightful to hear from you about what you are doing in Israel. And can you tell us, or can you give us some ideas about what you are doing for primary education for kids, for example? Do you have some special programs to develop the entrepreneurial mindset? Do you have some because I think the change happens during the time. It takes time. So I'm just thinking about it. Do you have some policies or some projects or some from something from the government to share with us about what you are doing for kids, for primary education, to develop the entrepreneurial mindset?
So first of all, that's an excellent question. But I must say that I think that the key is there are not that basically there are no policies. I will share with you from my personal experience. My kids were educated, part of them in the US and in the other part in Israel. And when we moved to the US, I was amazed that there are policies, that there are rules. The Israeli education system, to me, it's kind of loose. I do see that, and my kids are going to, there are exceptional programs for mathematics that like there are very intense programs for that. It's not for the students. Basically, there are very strict filtering for the number of kids that can go there. But I think that it is not something that has to do with the education system from a young age. And this is maybe also contribute to that, because kids, they are very free to do what they want. I can tell you that I've been experiencing the US education system, and they are educating the kids to go and to behave according to certain rules. And this is something that in Israel we are less strict in that. Kids, sometimes it's also, I see that it's a very negative one. The kids can be very wild, but
But do you think that has some kind of impact on the creativity level of kids, like not having policies set up? I mean, not kind of, because sometimes people say or wonder that having strict policies on how to educate kids put them in a kind of box, a kind of psychological, I mean, a more restricted world. I don't know, maybe that's just an exaggeration, but maybe that's true. I don't know, but when you think about...
I agree with you. I totally agree with your diagnosis. The fact that we're not keeping the kids in a box, that basically introduce their creativity. They are not afraid to fail. So I agree. That's a good.
Okay. Yes. Amazing. And just to keep from the Khadija's question, what about the education related to STEM, like mathematics, engineering? Because I think that's a big part of Israel educational system. You guys are very strong at mathematics and like science in general. So that's you have a clear policy. I mean, at being best or trying to best other countries at these knowledges or sciences?
So I think that Israel is in a very good position in education of science and mathematics, and from the level that the kids are going, to the high education, even in school, they have a very strict policies, as opposed to the kindergarten. They have very strict policies.
Okay.
And the level of education of the science and technologies are good. I think that the fact that they are all grow on the culture of the entrepreneurship, they are all feel that they can do it.
Okay. Okay. Amazing.
And that's good. That's a good thing, because basically I think that how back to the entrepreneurial intention. So what I'm always telling that to my students, the purpose of the accelerator is not necessarily that you will start your first startup, but I want you to fail, okay? I want you to experience that, because most of the startups, most of the entrepreneurs, they will success after the second or third experience. So I'm telling them, I'm saving you one experience. So please do not be afraid to fail. That's good that you will fail. That means that 30% of your success is already in your pocket, and that's excellent strategy. So I think that when we're talking about universities and colleges, they have a very important role in increasing the entrepreneurial intention in the population, in the national level. And as much as we will educate our students, not necessarily how to build a better business plan, this is not the purpose. So basically is how to be very resistant to failures. Okay, how I'm doing even different exercise to the students to emphasize for them how they are afraid to fail. I took also students from Magdeburg University in Germany, and there is a certain course that now I'm doing because there are students in business school. And when students are going to business schools, sometimes they have, the part of the entrepreneurship program, and the faculty members, they told me, listen, our problem is our students, they are afraid to fail, and we don't know what to do with that. So I built a course to them that calls Exponential Innovation, where part of the course is also dealing with that, how you're not afraid to fail, how you're experiencing, trying, developing your own role model. And this is very important part. And I think that if the colleges and universities will adopt these kind of programs, not necessarily the ones that are expected to be in the curriculum of entrepreneurship studies, this is where nations will start to develop a vibrant ecosystems.
Amazing, amazing. Yes, that's great. Well, first of all, I'd like to take your course. I got to say, I got to tell you this. And secondly, failure can be a big stigma. I mean, and we all have fear. It's a basic human emotion, but at the same time, it keeps us from doing so many great things. And so that's amazing. That's a great initiative. That's the first time I hear about it. It's amazing, really. Arwana posted a question. When you talked about the major activity, multinational companies, there seems to be a sharp increase in their insertion of these multinational companies in the national territory of Israel from 2004 onwards. What do you attribute this fact to? Was there any relevant fact that marked this moment in the history of Israel? I mean, this increase in multinational companies.
You're asking what is the reason for that? For the
yes,
okay.
Yes.
So
why the multinational companies started to come in larger numbers to Israel from 2004 onwards? If there's any.
That's a good question. I think that first of all, in Israel we have new immigrants that are coming.
Okay.
Now, the fact that we have immigrants that are coming from different countries, they contribute to the innovation. During I cannot remember the year, but there was an aliyah, we call it, where Jewish people come from different parts of the world to Israel. This is called aliyah in Hebrew. They came from Russia, and the immigrants that came from Russia basically brought a great, excellent knowledge in engineering. Okay. And that basically increased the level of knowledge. Now, more than that, the high-tech capabilities in Israel increased over the years, and they are increased because the defense system in Israel is basically has excellent, really exceptional capabilities in AI, machine learning, algorithms, basically data analysis, and that starts in the army, and then it's diffused to the industry, because those kids basically at some point going out to the industry.
Okay, interesting. Yes, talking about Russia, Andrei Mikhailov, he was born in Russia, right, Andrei? Andrei posted a question.
Right, Professor.
Dr. Neta, first of all, thank you very much for your presentation. My question is about university academia relations. You said that they are not very strong in Israel. Is there any measure that you use to evaluate the impact of those relations on the industry performance and on the innovation ecosystem's performance? I mean, I don't know if there's any metrics you use to measure this, the effectiveness, or maybe the intention, the intensity of these relations between academia and industry.
So actually, the fact that the government gives financial incentives for these kinds of collaboration between the academy and the industry, it is possible to measure that. I'm sure that they are measuring that. By that they are seeing how many new applicants are applying for this kind of grants and what are the outputs, because basically they see the whole picture from the collaboration step until we have new product in the market. Since Andre, these are long processes. Sometimes you're sowing your seeds in early time, and you see that even 10 years from now or so.
Yes. Amazing. Yes. I mean, it's a long-term investment, right? Yes. The country has to be willing to make that investment and to take the risks.
And Dr. Neta, can I just ask one more question about this issue? Do you think you have any statistics, maybe on the Statistical Institute, about this measurement of the effectiveness of the relationship and their impact on the innovation ecosystems and on the industry performance, where I can maybe check these indicators, or maybe they're not available publicly?
I do not think that they are available publicly. We do not have them. I think that those data basically will be available only in the government institutes, in the IIA. But what we can do, and we are doing that, we are always checking the statistics of our students. For instance, I can tell you that the studies that we're taking are focusing on what is the impact of technology education on the socioeconomic level in specific areas, specifically in the periphery. And we see very clearly the effect. What we are also doing is that we are analyzing data of students. I don't know if you're aware of that, but the Israeli population is basically consists Arabs, Jewish, especially in within engineering colleges like our. It's very interesting to see and to analyze the number of female, because the numbers of female in engineering schools, they are relatively low. So what we are doing are different studies how to increase the number of women and what are the reasons for dropouts, for instance, because we want to reduce those dropouts. But we are putting a lot of efforts to analyze what is the impact of technology education, because in the end of the day, we know that basically the IIA, they are coming in later stage, but we're in earlier stage, whereby we're still able to change the perception of those students about entrepreneurship. We're still able, there is still agility. Once they're out there in the industry, most likely that they're already in the stage that they are very solid.
Amazing. Yes. And Fabrizio Beltrami has posted a comment when I read it. Quote, the secret sauce of Israel seems to be the combination of a local and a global vision by the IIA, well executed with a precise focus over high-end technology. I believe that we here in Brazil are thinking about how to do it. In Israel, it has already been done, and it has already worked. Clearly, this road is impossible without quality investments on STEM education and soft skills. Congrats, Dr. Neta, and thank you for sharing the Israel vision for innovation ecosystem. Great discussion insights.
Thank you so much.
Yes. And Luciana left a note. Unfortunately, I need to leave because I have a meeting. Granddaughter, it's a great having you with us. I don't know, the thing about Khadija, because Khadija, the Luciana, well, the thing is, do you know Luciana? Because she wrote granddaughter, it's just a little joke, because Neta in Portuguese means granddaughter. So that's why she wrote that. Great to have you here with us. Maybe we soon meet again at a congress or in your visit in Brazil. Neta, oh no, she corrected, yes. because Neta in Portuguese is granddaughter. It means
Is what?
It's granddaughter, means granddaughter.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, really. Yeah. Yeah, and okay. Well, I have another question, and it's related to the thing you mentioned about the army, because I remember again when I went to Israel. Israel is a very militarized country for obvious reasons. I mean, there are historical reasons and so on. I don't want to get into that, but the thing is that this experience in the army, I believe it's very strong because men, as far as I remember, have to serve for 3 years and women for 2 years. And I believe it's a great opportunity to increase discipline and focus and commitment. So do you think it really helps the entrepreneurial mindset? Or I don't know if there is any study that compares like the level of success or entrepreneurial engagement between ex-military people and people who didn't go to the army?
Actually, I do not think that there is such a study because it is problematic because we do not have the control group because everyone goes to the army.
Okay. Okay.
But that's an interesting question. I think that what we are doing is basically we're measuring personality elements and also the entrepreneurial intention. And the purpose is to see whether there are certain personality elements that contribute more or less to the entrepreneurial intention.
Okay, amazing. Yes. Any other question? We still get some time. If anyone has another question, feel free to ask it or to write it.
I do want to thank you in the meantime. That's a great pleasure for me to be here. Thank you, Khadija, for inviting me here. And I'm hoping that we can collaborate and have you here as our guest or to visit you in the future. That the COVID will enable us to go back to our regular life.
Yes, yes,
yes, yes. But it will be a pleasure, a big pleasure, Neta, if we could collaborate in some different areas.
Sure.
We already work as co-authors in some papers. I knew Neta since 2018. 2019. 2019. I met Neta in Florence at the SPIN conference. And since there we are talking about things. We did data collection in Brazil, in Israel, and also in South Africa with our partners from Stellenbosch University. Bibiana also is our co-author. Neta, probably you don't know Bibiana in person, so Bibiana is here.
Now I
see. Good.
Nice to meet you, Neta.
Meet you.
So at this moment, it's very important for us to have you here. Also, we have here in this meeting Kezia. Kezia is a PhD candidate, and we are talking.
Nice to meet you.
Kezia, that organized this meeting for us, and also Kezia is thinking about what she will study in their PhD. So maybe we have some opportunities to collaborate and also to send some students to Israel to have this experience with you and with your university. So I think it could be interesting.
Sure, my pleasure.
Amazing.
So in the future, we will have other conversations about it. But again, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Neta. Really, I have a great admiration for your country, for your people, for your culture. It's amazing. And thank you for teaching us, for telling us so many things about how Israel has become one of the most innovative countries in the world. And it's been a great pleasure. So I think, I don't know, maybe you'd like to say some final words?
I just want to thank you for the opportunity, and you're more than welcome to visit us again.
Thank you very much. Thank
Sure.
you. Thank you again.
Okay.
So, yes, I think we had a great discussion. Thank you for everybody for being here with us in this morning, in this afternoon in Israel, or evening, almost even, I believe. So it was a great experience. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Diego,
Bye
for
bye.
coordinating this
Khadija.
session.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you for inviting me. It was a great honor. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.